Hello, I'm Eric Siegel. Welcome to Twinning Strategy.
And I'm Jeff Siegel, and today's episode is called The Dreaded Cold Sales Call. All right, Eric, so this is what happens. This guy sets up a call with me, like a sales call, just out of the blue.
So, who is this guy, first of all, before you jump into what he says? Because is it somebody that you knew? Is it somebody you've worked with before? Like, what led you to
Not
answer the call?
not somebody I knew. Just I was being sort of generous. This guy went to the same business school that I went to, and I thought, all right, I'll take the call, see what he wants to talk about or whatever. Anyway, so I hop on the call with this guy, and I swear, like 30 seconds into the call, we got past very brief introductions, and he just launches into like, this is what I do, this is what my company does, here's a list of all the things that make us different from other people, and blah blah blah. And I'm listening to this guy, and I'm all like, we're like 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, whatever, into the call, and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm gonna have to be on this call for another 30 minutes with this guy just talking about stuff. And I
Yeah, I
you
totally
know
get this. I mean, I've been there before, and I can remember certainly when I had when I was leading a department at a company where I would bring people in to assess some software product or something like that, and the salespeople would come in, and there'd be like 6 or 7 highly paid individuals sitting around a table listening to them drone on about all these features that they didn't care about. It was just a total misalignment of what it was that we needed versus what they were talking about.
exactly. And at this point, like, all I'm thinking is, how do I get off this call, like, in a nice polite way? I don't want to, don't want to be a jerk. I just want to get off the call because it's not useful to me.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that I think that everybody is frustrated. Like the dread and the dreaded cold sales call is not just the person who is the receiving end, it's also the person who's making the call. They don't want to talk to somebody who doesn't want to talk to them. They're just doing their job and trying to, hoping for the best on this thing. And I think that's an important thing to remember.
And I think that's exactly right. You like, somehow you have to get past this idea that everybody is somebody to sell to if you're the salesperson, because frankly, some people don't have the problem that you are trying, you can solve. And so in some ways, the best thing you can do is actually not jump in and try and tell everybody, all here's all the list of things that my product does, because what that makes the person on the receiving end of the call do is try and figure out what which of the very many things that your product does solves their problem. It's too much work for them. What might be more valuable is actually stopping and asking the person, what problems do you have, and trying to qualify whether that problem is a problem that your product can solve. And if it is, great. And if it isn't, then also great. You've figured it out. There's no business here, or maybe there isn't business here right now. Maybe there's business sort of further down the road.
Yeah, so this is all about qualifying at every stage, really. It's not only qualifying whether you're calling the right person, but you need to qualify that you actually that this is the right person throughout the discussion with the person. Like if you get into a few minutes and you're like, this person really doesn't need my services, then don't waste everybody's time. Okay, so we have
Yeah, I mean, there's
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, sorry. Like, in some ways, what's the best sales calls are the ones where, like, the person on the other end is just, the person who's on the sort of receiving end of this call is describing a problem, and you're like, yeah, that's yes, we totally get that problem. And they can then describe, like, I hear this problem from people all the time, and we help people deal with this problem. Now I'm sitting here like, yes, I need your help. You're like the product is almost selling itself at this point, because I've described a problem. You're telling me you've got a solution to my problem, and we're sort of having this meeting of the minds, if you will.
Okay, so on this slide here, we have this guy screaming. So who's screaming? Is it I think initially I thought we were talking about you screaming because you're frustrated, but who is actually screaming? Is it both sides that are screaming?
I think it's back to what you were saying before. I think everybody's frustrated on these calls, right? It's me screaming because I'm, in my head thinking, "Get me off this call," and then it's the salesperson screaming because they're like, "I need sales. This is my job. Like I'm gonna get fired if I can't get this person to,
Why
this
did I just
person to."
decide to go this route? Got it. Got it. So, okay. So everybody's screaming in that scenario, and there's got to be another way, right? So we talked a little bit about, we're going to qualify, but what could how could the person making that cold sales call, how could they have done something different? What could they have done to change the tone, the direction? Like specifically, what could they have done?
Well, I mean, I think in this, it's sort of what we were talking about before. I think in this particular case, the guy should have stopped and sort of said, "Hey, tell me about, this guy, and this particular guy was trying to sell me, sort of certain methodology of, consumer research, right?" And like what he could have done was said, "Tell me about consumer research. What kind of consumer research do you do? How do you do it? Do you have vendors or whatever?" He would have very quickly determined that what he was proposing to me was not new and different, which was his whole shtick, right? Was like, this is different. Nobody else does this. I'm like, well, everybody else does this, right? He would have figured that out quickly. And what that would have allowed him to do was actually shift gears and sell me a little bit of a different way. What can you bring to the table that's different and valuable to me? And if the answer is nothing, fine, right? It would just be like, hey, let's talk about the business school we went to, or whatever, and just say, hey,
Make the
agree
connection
to
and
move on,
network a bit. Yeah.
right?
So
Right.
do you? I mean, I can't recall too many cases in my experience where people have done it the way you're suggesting. What do you find people doing it sort of the right way, or or the way that you're proposing, or are most people just going the opposite
I
route?
only think there are people who do it the right way. I think sometimes they do it the right way, like they actually figure out the problem, that you have a problem they're trying to solve, prior to the call. They do their research, they do their homework. Some people do it that way. I was talking to a guy the other day, a different research vendor who, was talking about how he hopped on a call, and actually he said it was like the fastest sales cycle he had ever seen because he basically just got on the call and started asking the right questions.
All right, so let me just recap what we've just been talking about. So three key points. First of all, it's qualify, and qualify means you qualify not only at the beginning and before you get on the call, but you keep qualifying as you're going through. The second one is to ask questions. So you don't want to be jumping in and just listing capabilities, because you're liable to just get into something that the person really doesn't care about, and then you've lost them. They've gone off, started thinking about how they get off the call, instead of asking them questions and figuring out whether there actually is a problem that you can solve. And then once you've figured out what that problem is, then you want to sell to that problem.
Yeah, I think you've got it, Eric. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. If you found this interesting, subscribe. We'll be doing more of these. Looking forward to the next one.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Eric.